For 6 centuries, the Ottoman Empire ruled between 3 continents. Then, it crumbled. This was not the fall of a small kingdom. It was the death of one of history's greatest empires. At its height, the Ottomans terrified Europe, controlled holy cities, and commanded armies across 3 continents. But by the 20th century, that mighty empire was called the sick man of Europe. So how did an empire that once shook the world become too weak to save itself? To understand the collapse, we must first see how powerful it once was. The Ottomans began as a small frontier state in Anatolia. From that small beginning, they built a machine of conquest. Their armies pushed west into the Balkans and east toward the heart of the Islamic world. Then came the prize that changed everything: Constantinople. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II brought massive cannons to the city walls. When Constantinople fell, the Byzantine Empire ended, and a new imperial capital was born. The city became Istanbul, the beating heart of Ottoman power. For centuries, the empire controlled trade routes between east and west. Under Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire reached its golden age. Ottoman law, architecture, armies, and administration shaped a vast imperial world. But every golden age hides the first shadows of decline. The world outside the empire was changing faster than ever before. European powers began sailing around Africa, opening new routes to Asia. Trade slowly shifted away from the old Mediterranean routes. The Ottoman Empire was still huge, but size was becoming a weakness.
A vast empire is hard to govern, harder to reform, and almost impossible to move quickly.
While Europe modernized, Ottoman institutions grew older, slower, and more resistant.
The empire did not collapse overnight. It began to fall behind. One of the empire's greatest strengths became one of its deepest problems: the Janissaries.
They were once elite soldiers, feared on battlefields from Europe to the Middle East. But over time, they gained wealth, privilege, and political power. The army that once protected the empire began to block its modernization. They resisted European-style reforms because reform threatened their position.
Some sultans tried to change the army. Some paid for it with their thrones.
By the time the Janissaries were finally destroyed in 1826, too much time had been lost.
The empire had removed an obstacle, but it could not recover decades of delay. Then came a force no empire could easily control: nationalism. The Ottoman Empire was not one nation. It was a world of many peoples.
For centuries, imperial rule held these communities together. But in the 9th century, people began demanding nations of their own. Greece broke away. Serbia rose. Bulgaria demanded freedom.
the Balkans became a battlefield of identity, religion, and revenge. Every rebellion weakened the empire. Every lost province inspired another. The empire was not only losing land, it was losing the idea that it could hold itself together. Outside the empire, powerful enemies were watching.
Russia wanted access to warm water ports and influence over Orthodox Christians.
Britain wanted to protect the route to India.
France wanted power in North Africa and the Levant.
Austria-Hungary wanted influence in the Balkans. The Ottoman Empire was still alive, but its future was being discussed in foreign capitals. This was the age when Europe called it the sick man, and sickness became debt. The empire borrowed heavily from European banks. By losing financial control, the empire lost part of its independence. The Ottomans knew they had to reform, but reform came late.
The Tanzimat reforms promised new laws, new schools, and a modern state.
But reforming an old empire is like repairing a ship in the middle of a storm.
Conservatives feared change. Minorities doubted promises. Foreign powers demanded concessions.
Every reform created new enemies, and every delay made reform more urgent.
Then the Young Turks rose, promising to save the empire through revolution and modernization. They wanted a stronger state, a modern army, and a new Ottoman future.
But the empire was running out of time.
In 1912, the Balkan Wars exploded.
A coalition of Balkan states attacked the weakened Ottoman Empire.
The empire lost almost all its remaining land in Europe. This was more than a military defeat. It was a psychological collapse. Muslim refugees fled toward Anatolia, carrying the trauma of a dying empire.
Istanbul itself felt vulnerable. The imperial heart was now exposed.
Then came the final gamble. World War I.
The Ottoman leaders sided with Germany, hoping victory would restore lost power. They feared Russia, distrusted Britain, and believed the old empire could still be saved. At Gallipoli, Ottoman soldiers shocked the world by stopping the Allies. But one victory could not save a collapsing system. In the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, Palestine, and Arabia, the empire was stretched beyond its limits. Railways failed. Supplies ran out. Soldiers starved. Provinces slipped away. The Arab Revolt weakened Ottoman control in the desert. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire had lost the war and its last chance to survive. After the war, the empire was carved apart by the victorious powers. Istanbul was occupied. The Sultan remained, but his power was fading into history. From the ruins, a new nation was born. The Ottoman Empire was gone,
but its fall reshaped the modern world.